How do you look at this entire sequence of events which have happened?
Well, it's obviously been a bit of a setback for us, a bit disappointing for the country. You may remember that Mr. Modi was amongst the first heads of state or government to visit Mr. Trump after his inauguration. I think he was the fourth. And their meeting went well and ended with a declaration by both leaders that there would be discussions on trade, negotiations, which were to conclude by the fall. So I thought that that was a good piece of news, that we would basically be in a position where we would not be immediately pressured on tariffs, because we would have until the fall to come to a conclusion. So the first surprise was when suddenly 25% tariffs were imposed on India. Now, why was that bad? Because other countries, particularly those countries in our neighborhood and in Southeast Asia, that are competing with us in the same kind of low-value, labor-intensive industries, they were all at 15 to 19% and we were 25. So suddenly, our exporters had a premium of 6% that their rivals did not have. In some cases more than 6%, some cases up to 10% more, because some were 15, some were 16, 17, 18, 19%, depending on which country we're talking about. Suddenly the impact was terrible. In Surat, they laid off 135,000 gem and jewelry workers. In Tirupur, in Coimbatore, not only were they laying off workers, but some factories are now threatening to close. In Visakhapatnam, where exports of shrimp exports and marine products were targeting the US in very, very large percentage, they found their entire industry unviable. Suddenly we had a huge problem which we had not anticipated. We were still not recovering from this when the second 25%, which is not just tariffs but a sanction, came on us because of our purchase of oil from Russia during the war. That was supposed to be a means of pressuring Russia, but the damage was done to us because a whole lot of our industries became completely unviable. $48 billion of our $87 billion of exports suddenly became off the market. I mean, no one was going to buy. Cancellations of orders were taking place colossally. And we suddenly found ourselves in a position where, with the exception of pharmaceuticals, where they still have not decided on their tariff rate, and the question of some electronics like Apple iPhones and some electronic parts, by and large, everything else, suddenly India was essentially in the process of losing America as an export market. Now, that was very, very bad news, but as you know, there's been some change. First of all, the Americans had cancelled the visit of the delegation scheduled to come to India on the 25th of August for the 6th round of trade negotiations. Fortunately, they restored that in September, and the delegation did come last week. And now this week, our Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has gone, which suggests to me that they are very close to coming to an agreement. That would be on the first 25%. So if we can get that 25 down to the same 15 to 19, maximum 20 that our rivals have, then we are back in business on all of those items, provided that second 25% is dealt with separately. As long as that second 25% is there, it almost doesn't matter what the first 25 is, because with that second 25, we're out of business with America, and we will have to go and diversify our exports elsewhere. But that second 25% is a political matter. It's not, as far as I'm aware, it's not in Mr. Goyal's brief to go and do that. He is there to try and settle a deal on the trade elements. So that's where we stand on the tariffs.
So what do you think, what went wrong and what next? Because you are a keen observer and you have dealt with foreign affairs.
We shouldn't immediately assume something went wrong between us and America particularly. What went wrong to begin with is that Mr. Trump has this idea that tariffs are the magic instrument to solve a number of his problems. What are these problems? He feels that too many things that used to be manufactured in America are now being imported from abroad. He wants to make that more expensive so that the American manufacturers will start doing things more in America and employ American workers who are his base, the MAGA constituency as it's called. Secondly, he believes that tariffs can be a useful source of revenue for his country. There is a massive deficit in America, colossal. I mean, it's the largest in the world by far. He hopes that by actually collecting, as he claims, billions of dollars every month in revenues by tariffs, that he will be able to bring down his deficit. And thirdly, there is in his view, have been getting a free ride at the expense of the American consumer, and that therefore this is a way of paying them back. That's why he calls them reciprocal tariffs, though many of them are not reciprocal at all, because the tariffs he's imposing, in many cases, including us, are higher than what we were imposing. Our average tariff on the US average was 17%. Theirs is a blanket 25%, which is simply not fair either. So all of these things, to my mind, suggest to me that his logic is nothing to do with India particularly, but is more to do with his domestic political constituency.
So do you think he has alienated India in a way, because we are singled out on various fronts? Even China, who bought Russian oil, they are not penalized.
Exactly. So the unfairness of this has definitely created a very strong backlash in India, and the accompanying insults, both by Mr. Trump's own language in his statements and tweets, and subsequently the extremely offensive statements by his advisor, Mr. Navarro, those have certainly got a lot of backs up in New Delhi and across the country. Because frankly, if there is no particular problem in a relationship which for 30 years has been heading towards greater closeness, greater warmth, why would you suddenly use this kind of language about India? It was not at all appreciated.
Is it a point of no return, sir?
No. I would not say it's a point of no return, because I do believe that the longer term interests of both countries will eventually bring us back on even keel. It's certainly a very sharp setback in the short term. It is costing us, it is costing jobs in India, it's costing losses in India. And so for India, it is undoubtedly bad news this year. But look at the larger picture. Is America, whatever Mr. Trump do, prepared to write off India altogether? At the moment, there's no reason to imagine that. There is a lot of cooperation taking place on defense, on intelligence sharing, a number of areas of cooperation, everything ranging from outer space to IT and AI and so on, where the two countries are cooperating at various levels, well below the level of the heads of government. So I don't see that suddenly halting. No one has told anybody in America to stop doing that. Those are of great interest to both countries. Secondly, we have fundamentals that are still real. That is, we have a very large presence of Indians in America. 4.3 million Americans are of Indian descent. We have still the largest single student body, though I think that will go down with the new H-1B thing. But at the moment, the largest number of foreign students are Indians. The largest number of CEOs in Silicon Valley who are not American or not of American birth are Indians.
Is that troubling Mr. Trump?
It's troubling some people in his backers because, let's face it, the anti-immigration constituency has suddenly become much more vocal and much more acceptable than before. America used to be a very open, welcoming and inclusive society, irrespective of your color, your race, your religion, whatever. Today, the dominant political forces, the so-called MAGA movement, are very openly anti-immigrants. And particularly the visible immigrants, that is, people of a different color who dress differently or look different, can immediately be spotted as not of the sort of white ethnic mainstream. They are being targeted much more in ways that were not considered politically correct in America in the old days, but today political correctness is not a priority.
What do you make of this H-1B issue, sir? He has suddenly hiked the fees, which is, I think, unviable for any company to pay such big.
So in the old days, the fee was $2,000 to a maximum of $4,000. Now it's suddenly gone up to $100,000. But you have to understand a couple of things. Again, the motives are principally driven by domestic politics. Mr. Trump believes, and the people around him have told him, that the easy H-1B has meant that a lot of Americans who deserve a higher salary from the same companies are being bypassed by Indians who will accept a lower salary. So an Indian techie who comes and works for $60,000 a year is taking away, according to Mr. Trump's supporters, jobs from an American who would not work for less than, let's say, $85,000 or $90,000 a year, for argument's sake. I'm talking about a junior techie. The salaries go up at other levels. So what they're saying is, let us make the low-end jobs unviable by the $100,000 fee, so only the high-end, really desirable, irreplaceable top people who are worth it for a company to spend $100,000 on, only they will come. Now, I don't understand the logic of this, whether it's actually ever going to work. First of all, for many companies, the obvious solution will be to outsource the job. That is, what used to be done in America can now be done either by the same multinational companies' units in Europe, in Germany, in England, in Ireland, in France, or in many cases in their global capability centers in India. So that in fact the same Indian techies may now be working for the same money in India rather than working in America. So the visa will no longer be required. The challenge will be in the short term for the Indian companies that would take on a contract to do a job, whether it's for an American state government, a big American company, a hospital, whatever it may be, and fulfill that contract by sending their people from India on H-1B visas. That will now become unviable. So many of those contracts will either need to be revised or will no longer be feasible for Indian companies to bid, because we cannot pay $100,000 per person to go off and do a contract which is actually a low-end contract.
Sir, the bigger, I think, trouble more is a strategic in nature. Their closeness with Pakistan, especially Munir, has been hosted twice. And we are seeing some kind of a cooperation between increased cooperation between US and Pakistan. So you have been to US after Operation Sindoor. So at this point of time, in the backdrop of what has happened in Pahalgam and all that, this is giving a very, very bad vibe or bad optics to India also.
Right. So we have been shaken by this. We have allowed ourselves to forget that Pakistan is an old ally of the United States. You know, we only know about NATO these days, but there used to be organizations called SEATO and CENTO, and Pakistan was a member of both. And they were allies of the US at a time when we were non-aligned. So the US traditionally was closer militarily and strategically to Pakistan earlier. And then, as you know, a number of degrees of cooperation got intensified when the Soviet Union marched into Afghanistan, and Pakistan became the base for the American orchestration of the whole Mujahideen efforts to overthrow and push out the Soviets from Afghanistan. During that time, intelligence cooperation intensified. American intelligence agents and ISI agents. The ISI actually was set up with American guidance and cooperation. We know that. There's a whole lot of history there that we have allowed ourselves to forget because of the more recent years of warmth. So we've had 30 years of warmth between India and America, true, but the old history should not be forgotten. There are still very many Pakistani military officers who were trained in America, who have been to American defense colleges, who are friends, batchmates from American armed forces. You have a number of Pakistani intelligence operatives who have worked and been trained by the Americans and who are close to their counterparts. So we should never lose sight of the fact that these relationships have been long and deep. And though there was definitely a setback after 9/11, when the Americans were very angry with Pakistan, and there was another setback for the Pakistanis when Osama bin Laden was found on their soil living in an army safe house and near an army camp in a cantonment city. Despite all of that,
Trump has forgotten
Pakistanis have managed to persuade the Americans that they are still an indispensable ally in counter-terrorism. Again, you know, we must not forget that the terrorists Pakistan breeds to attack us, they are not the ones attacking America. The ones who are attacking America, ISIS, Khorasan, Daesh, people like that, those are groups which are also attacking the Pakistani establishment and the Pakistani army. And for them, therefore, to go after those people and tell the Americans, see what we're doing for you, is a very successful strategy. So, for example, when the Americans were withdrawing from Kabul, there was a bombing at Abbey Gates at Kabul airport where 23 Marines were killed. The Pakistanis made a big shusha about finding the Abbey Gate bomber and handing him over to the Americans. The Americans are very grateful to Pakistan and to General Munir for doing that. Now, I don't know whether the fellow they handed over was really the main culpable person. There are anti-terrorism experts who tell me that the person is merely a patsy, that he is neither number one, number two, or number three in the operation that killed those American Marines. But if the Americans are willing to believe that Pakistan is cooperating with them in anti-terrorism, then so be it. Now, all of this history I mentioned to say that there is a relationship between America and Pakistan that is independent of India. However, given the recent context for us, as you said rightly, Operation Sindoor and our very, very troubled and tense relationship with Pakistan, it looks very bad in India. And definitely there is no doubt that when Mr. Trump claims to have ended the war here, when he has not even called India, and as far as we are concerned, we never needed persuading, because from the day one of Operation Sindoor we said, we are only targeting the terrorists, there's no retaliation, we are over, we are done. If Pakistan hits us, we'll hit them back, and if they stop, we'll stop. So the day the Pakistanis called our DGMO, Director General of Military Operations, and said, we want to call it off, we said, fine, well, let's call it off.
So there's no role of Trump, as you say.
I mean, no one needed to persuade us. Our messaging and our signaling was clear from every day. If you were watching the same briefings I was with the Foreign Secretary and the two lady colonels, they were saying the same thing every day. If they stop, we will stop. But as long as they hit us, we're going to hit them back equally hard, if not harder. And that's what happened. So it's possible, however, and this is what I said in Washington when I was asked, that if Washington persuaded Islamabad or Rawalpindi to stop, then we have every reason to be grateful. And perhaps that's something that we may be overlooking in our objection to what Mr. Trump is saying is, we don't know what went on between Washington and Islamabad. Maybe Mr. Trump lent very heavily on the Pakistani generals and said, do not escalate your retaliation because we want peace between you and India. For whatever reason, I mean, if they did that, then we should certainly say we appreciate that, even though we didn't ask for it. And we did not ask for it because we don't believe in anyone mediating between us and Pakistan.
The Saudi coming closer to Pakistan, and they had a defense pact.
Well, look, on the question of the Saudi action, again, don't forget, it's a formalization of a long-standing arrangement. Have you already forgotten there was a time when there were 20,000 Pakistani soldiers stationed in Saudi Arabia? Pakistan has long tried to project itself as the sort of enforcement arm of the Muslim world. In fact, there is a famous statement that has been quoted by some journalists in which the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia said, I don't need to make a bomb. If I want a bomb, I'll buy one from Pakistan. I mean, that kind of relationship has already been very, very well known to the world. And I don't think that we should right now overreact. However, there are some troubling elements, particularly the statement that any aggression on one country will be seen as aggression on the other. Don't forget that during Operation Sindoor, Pakistan told the whole world that it was Indian aggression. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, remained silent at that time. Will that change? In a resumption of Sindoor tomorrow, will Saudi Arabia have to be different? We don't know. But I'm sure, frankly, that our diplomats are not sitting idle. They are talking to the Saudis. They're clarifying a lot of these things. And I'm sure that we should have some faith in our government that on these matters, we have got very good relations with the Islamic world. Our relations with the Gulf countries in particular have never been stronger, and that we should be able to ride over this. But please understand one thing, and this has been a theme throughout this conversation. Not everybody else's policies are only based on us alone. We must not have such a self-centered view of the world that we assume everything Mr. Trump does that affects us is because of us or his feelings towards us. It may be about his domestic constituency. That everything he does for Pakistan is because of his feelings towards us. No, it's because of the history of Pakistan and the separate relationship they have with Pakistan. And the same for the Saudis. Let's take that in stride.
Thank you so much for talking to us, sir.